Thanks for joining me for this edition of the Author's Corner, brought to you by KNEO 91.7 FM, The Word. I'm Roberta Foster, and today I welcome Joe Horn to Author's Corner, and he is the author of the book Innocence Shattered, Dismantling the Insidious War Against Our Children, which is published by Charisma House, and he'll tell you more about how to find the book at the end of the program. Our discussion today is going to be kind of eye-opening, probably for many people, and so Joe, thank you so much for joining us on Author's Corner.
Roberta, thank you. What a privilege to be able to be here. Thank you.
Why is this book necessary?
Unfortunately, Roberta, the book Innocence Shattered is necessary because of a great evil that is being perpetrated on children in Western civilization in particular, that unfortunately much of the church is completely unaware of, and in large part totally ill-equipped to address for lack of education. I am a child advocate. Many, many years have served children that have been wards of the state. Many of these children are in foster care. They've seen every kind of abuse that's unimaginable to those that have lived lives mostly sheltered or came up with good parents, or would find it hard to imagine some of the trauma cycles and shame cycles of the things that my family as child advocates have seen in the lives of real life children. We're talking about wards of the state. We're talking about children that have been pulled out of sex trafficking. These kids have been victimized in forced prostitution, all kinds of abuse types, many of them locked in dog cages. Some of them have had their hands held on stovetops. They've been beaten with bicycle chains, and they hide under the beds from real life monsters that live just down the hallway waiting in terror for their very next abuse cycle. And I just want to say at the onset of this interview, if you're hearing that open and you're thinking, man, this is going to be too much, man, oh man, that's too dark, man, I don't have the stomach for this, that is precisely why I wrote the book Innocence Shattered. One of the things that Satan himself has been able to weaponize is the fact that these grimacing truths are uncomfortable. And he leans into those that are unwilling to confront it. We create every convenient excuse not to pay any attention to it. We want to pretend as though it doesn't exist. Or in a lot of cases, Roberta, a lot of people that might do something about it don't know where to begin. It's overwhelming, and they find themselves saying, as I once did, by the way, this is a personal part of my testimony, is that at one time, many, many years ago, I too was the very person that I'm talking about. In conventional church, listening to other advocates speak, seeing and bearing witness to what God could do with Christ-centered rehabilitation program. But I myself, basically crying out to God saying, this is too much for me, Lord. I don't have the appetite for this. This is not good for my health. I'm a father of four. This is not my calling. I tried to rationalize in every direction a way to kind of square this off of my shoulders and place it onto the shoulders of someone else, until I finally, in roughly 2014, had a culmination of events that I'll collapse for the sake of time today, where I finally gave God my yes. And I said, Lord, whatever it is, I will answer this call. My family created a safe haven called Whispering Ponies Ranch, where we serve these children with Christ-centered rehabilitation program. But what if I told you, Roberta, what if I told you that not only is the church ill-equipped and not addressing this, and the numbers bear this out, what if I told you that the church itself is actually involved, in part, in fueling the very industries that are responsible for underwriting the demand for forced prostitution for children, or the human sex trade industry? What if I told you that the church has blood on its hands? Would that shock you?
Well,
would that blow your mind? Would you be curious as to how that is?
Well, unfortunately, I think I have an inclination as to the answer, and the statistics show that so many of our church-going people are all bound up in pornography use. Is that the origin?
Much of it is. You've hit the nail on the head. The church, if you look at Barna Research, published in 2020, they did a study where they talked to real-life ministers all across the United States, and they found these are the admitted ones. So only the admitted ones. The number is probably higher, but they found a staggering number of senior pastors, 57% of our senior pastors, and 64% of our youth pastors admit that they've struggled with porn either currently or in the past, with an average of about 20% minimum who admit this. And if you factor in the ministry-ending shame cycles, the ones that would be worried about losing their vocation or their paycheck or their power or their position of influence, you figure that the number is probably higher than that. But let's just go with what is quantifiable based on this Barna research. The same report goes on to explain that less than 1% of these same admitted leaders, air quote, recommended even telling their congregation. Only 8% of the pastors think that a pastor should have to resign his or her position of influence in the church if they're struggling with pornography. Most think that they should deal with the struggle through counseling or accountability but continue pastoring, and only 10% of U.S. Christians say that their church offers porn addiction support. Now, why did I go from human trafficking, the foster care system, abuse cycles? Why did I launch right into the church's culpability in the porn industry? And again, for the sake of time, I'm trying to collapse what is done very exhaustively in the book, Innocence Shattered. But if you understand that it is a direct correlation between the porn industry and the appetite that is a side effect of when people find that they're exhausted with what they can enact out based on titillation via their computer screen. Now it is an excess. It's called the sin of progressionism, because porn normalizes exploitation. It creates a market of suffering. It reinforces desensitization. It facilitates trafficking as a front. It enables dark web and illegal content. It portrays evil power dynamics that over time, Roberta, have a point of diminished return. So somebody that believes themselves to be watching what is consensual, let's just call it lovemaking on video from two consenting adults, which, by the way, is also under total scrutiny, is a lot of what you're seeing on these platforms is actually forced prostitution being packaged as consensual, air quote, lovemaking, which is a whole other subchapter of Innocence Shattered, how these people end up being handled by Johns and controllers and cannot get out of the industry. But let's just assume you're watching, air quote, lovemaking from consensual adults. What titillates and fascinates for a moment is fleeting. And now, because you've said to God, I am Ephraim, I have joined my idols, I reject your conviction, I don't want anything to do with it, I'm tired of feeling the guilt, or maybe they're grappling with the guilt but continue the behavior, what titillates in just a snapshot of life becomes utterly boring within weeks to months later. So if you're a married person watching this or listening to this podcast, and you're playing around with pornography, you're probably already experiencing how your spouse alone is utterly boring. And I'm not going to get into the details of how dark and grimacing this goes, but again, the sin of progressionism, you're constantly pursuing that next level of dopamine rush, that next emotional chemical hit of titillation. And when you say to God, I'm going to embrace in my sin flesh suit everything that my wildest daydreams and desires can construct, and it has no bumper rails, it's whatever I daydream, whatever I imagine, you give yourself over to Luciferian forces that are going to take your mind on a journey to becoming someone completely unrecognizable from the person that God designed you to be. It is guaranteed, it is factored in, and the numbers bear this out. Most of the people serving out life sentences in prison who are there that would say, I have ended the life of someone else, or I've catastrophically injured them, they'll never be the same, would say that the first moment in life they began to view people as less than human beings. They were reduced to playthings only there to satiate their wildest desires, would say that they all have this one thing in common, and that was early onset porn addiction. that right now more than 420,000 small children and young people are already living in the foster care system here in the United States. 90% of those children, Roberta, are statistically guaranteed to experience severe trauma in every way possible that you can imagine. I just said 90% of them. Only 50% of these children will ever reunite with biological family members or see loved ones or familiar faces ever again. These children are 4 to 5 times more likely to commit suicide than those who are not. More than 23,000 young adults will age out of the foster care system this year. And if you're wondering if that system has prepared these kids for adulthood or to integrate into society to be productive members of the world, more than 80% of these young men will statistically fall into incarceration immediately. Over 70% of the young women from this group will be pregnant before the age of 21, with kids destined for where? Where do you think they're headed? The foster care system, and the cycle continues.
Okay, so let me just interrupt for a moment and remind the listener I'm talking with Joe Horn regarding his book, Innocence Shattered, Dismantling the Insidious War Against Our Children. It's published by Charisma House, and you're listening to Author's Corner, and I'm Roberta Foster. So, Joe, we have just about 2 minutes left, and so One of the things you brought up was how to get started. How does a church decide, or what do they do if they say, I want to help, but I don't know how?
This is a spiritual problem, and our government is not going to fix it for us. We didn't even get into the public school systems, the normalization of what is the attempt to create the normalization of inappropriate relationships between adults and children. The book Innocence Shattered really is the clinic from the beginning to the end of all of the spiritual dynamics behind this massive catastrophe. And if the listener today says, Joe, you've done a good job, you've compelled me, I understand what you're saying, and I want to get involved, the book Innocence Shattered really is your field guide.
Okay.
It is written in a way that is sanitary as not to be explicit in its description of the abuse that these kids go through. But it is detailed enough so that you understand the spiritual dichotomy that we as a nation have put these kids in. There is an appendix at the end of the book that walks, I don't care how much money you have, I don't care what age you are, I don't care what demographic you live in. There's an appendix at the end of the book that's very comprehensive, it's very thoughtful, and it answers that question. Where are your skill sets? What has God put you here to do? And I don't care if you remain in your current vocation, at the very least, it walks you through how to pray for these kids with purpose. So no one has an excuse not to champion the children that I'm talking about. They can purchase the book at skywatchtv.com if they want to support our charitable ministry, Whispering Ponies Ranch, and the work that we're doing for those children. But if they have an Amazon account and they really want to do it the quick and easy way, and they don't have any incentive to patronize Skywatch TV specifically, they can also get it at Amazon.com. The book is Innocence Shattered.
As mentioned, Innocence Shattered is made available to you through Charisma House, and Joe Horn has been our guest today. Joe, thank you for providing some insight into a world that many people may not know anything about, and so hopefully this will stir up some folks to action. So thank you so much for being with us on Author's Corner.
Thank you so much, Roberta.
And to our listeners, if you'd like to hear this interview again, or it's something that you think others should hear, you now can make it available to them through your favorite podcast platform or through kneo.org. So thank you so much for tuning in. This is Roberta Foster on the Author's Corner. Join me again next time.